Donnie Boy Lemonhead, no, not Donald Trump, but Don Lemon himself, seems to be in a bit of a quandary here. Okay, in a bit of a quandary, a quandary, because of the aftermath of him live streaming a bunch of protesters walking into a church in Minneapolis. Now, I want to be clear on this. Delicious coffee. Gotta love it for this cold Chicago morning. I'm all for free speech. I'm a free speech absolutist. I believe in the First Amendment. But there's a couple things you don't do, and that is storming inside a church, synagogue, mosque, places of worship, temples, anything like that, right? Because that's private property. And second of all, we saw the videos of the protesters getting in the face of all the parishioners at a church, and at least what they're saying is that one of the pastors is an agent for ICE, working with ICE by proxy with ICE. Well, hey, okay, that's the case. But if you're going to go in front of people's faces, record them without consent, yell at them, you're not really gaining any ground. And it is very possible, most likely, that not only the protesters, but even Don Lemon himself could be facing potential legal backlash. So, again, the legal process is very fickle, okay? The wheels of justice move slow. And if there's a go-getter prosecutor, they're going to try and find something. But the Department of Justice say it will pursue charges against Don Lemon and anti-ICE protesters for the St. Paul church invasion. So the DOJ will pursue charges against anti-ICE agitators who, on Good Morning, a Sunday morning church service in St. Paul, included disgraced former CNN reporter Don Lemon, who attempted to cloak his participation as an act of journalism. Here's the thing. If you're scouting ahead or you're with a group, I'm going to say this to all my fellow independent journalists, content creators, and even to the big people in corporate media. The rule of thumb is that you're supposed to, this is a controversial statement that's brave and bold, do research on the group you're with and kind of be like a step back away, because if what they're doing seems a little shady and a little stinky, well, then by all intents purposes, you might want to stay away from it. But no, he went in there, and Don Lemon went into the facility, and then he began to quote unquote began committing journalism as though what he was doing was groundbreaking. All what we saw was a bunch of protesters who, again, were failing at PR, just like how ICE is failing at PR. I've been noticing this on both sides. Yes, the actions of ICE and how they've been detaining people, confronting people, throwing tear gas, pepper balls, and everything else. I mean, listen, that's not going to win any hearts and minds. But protesters going in a church or going in a Target, or either that buying up salt and then having some poor retail worker pay back or deal with the returnings of you guys protesting ICE, you're not winning anything. And so in turn, here's I want to pull out here. Or you love her, John Wick's favorite person, Kristi Noem, made a comment about Don Lemonhead and the activists. So here we go. See, you're losing the ground, activists. You're losing the ground.
And that pastor really did a remarkable thing there, trying to protect his parishioners.
And even the parishioners, I imagine, have feel intimidated. And
they did. And there's going to be arrests in the next several hours, Greta. There will be arrests tied to that. And people will be brought to justice for how they violated the law in that situation.
Well, Don Lemon is a journalist. And so I thought he was going. And so when I first saw it, I assumed he was going in as a journalist covering it. I mean, I go into bad places and ask questions all the time. But when his comment about the white supremacy all of a sudden made me think, well, maybe he wasn't there as a journalist.
Yeah, well, Greta, not only that comment, but the fact that ahead of time, before this even happened, he said that he had conducted some surveillance before they went into this church. He identified individuals that were going in with him that were activists and the work that they'd done in the past. The fact that this entire situation was then posted on the Black Lives Matter website, all of that is something that they're going to be responsible for.
Well,
and that pastor really did a
So DOJ is seeking further engagement. And as it stands right now, I want to point this out here too. When you have a lot of activists, a lot of protesters now screaming like, oh, come and get me, DOJ, come and get me, DOJ. You know, I just want to say a lot of you morons are inviting stupidity and massive legal headaches because you can't go onto private property. And no matter how anyone feels about a mosque or a church or any place of worship, I don't care where you're politically aligned. You are not allowed to kick down the doors and start demanding people and force your political ideology upon someone else. I will debate somebody. In my live stream chat, I will allow healthy debate. All right. Doesn't need to reach to violence or anything like that, but a debate. And sometimes live stream audience, you guys get things pretty heated, and that's fine. But on private property, places of worship, business, where people are just mind their own business or just trying to do what they got to do to get through the day, that doesn't gain any ground. And when you have these activists calling out this administration, remember, here was my canary in the coal mine when I realized things were going to get a little bit out of pocket with ICE and this administration. When it happened here in Chicago, the guy on the bike saying F Donald Trump, again, no weapon, just, and you would think that the ICE agents, far more with body armor and weaponry and everything else, would let that slide off like water off a duck's back. But no, they chased after him. And of course, it was funny because they couldn't catch him. But I realized, if that's something so little benign will get them to do something like that, go to an 11, then anything's possible. And so one of the activists in turn, you might remember him. He was the one yelling in people's faces and saying, what are you doing about ICE? What are you doing about ICE?
I mean, what we're seeing around this country is they're using their political influence to attack people that disagree with them. They're going to come at me with charges, and I'm not scared of that. There's no base for these charges. I did not block them from, their service. They welcomed us in. They never asked us to leave. The police never came in and removed us. So we didn't stop their service. In fact, people were still praying the entire time. The music was still playing the entire time. So, Pam Bondi, you want to come and arrest me? You want to come and give me charges? So be it. And for all the people giving me death threats, threatening my life, kill me. Go ahead, kill me. Because you know what? As Fred Hampton said, you can kill the revolutionary, but you can't kill the revolution.
The video will be used as evidence, okay? Because you saw people, their church service was disrupted. People were standing up telling you to leave, and none of you were leaving. I don't think any of you were invited in, and not to mention, if one of the pastors, and again, just want to be clear on this, is associated with ICE in any which way or form, I'm going to say this, I don't think he'd invite you in anyways. Now, if there's evidence or paperwork or contracts or documentation that show the otherwise, if you guys just walked in there and just did that, you're in trouble. And the video evidence on social media is out there too, showing people leaving, families leaving with their kids. I would not do that, nor would I go ahead and start doing anything this stupid. But okay, you want to be stupid? It looks like this administration is willing to step up and go that far. I want to pull up this video here.
There is the clip of him talking about looking at the young people who are exiting the.
And exactly, listen, Fred Hampton and that guy, two different things altogether.
Sanctuary, and saying how they're traumatized, they're disturbed, and that's what's necessary in a protest like this. And I think that's just disgusting. I think that, we as Christians are never promised peace or comfortability in this life. We know that people will be against us, but that does not mean that we shouldn't call people out when they do something like that or when they say something like that against us. And I think that is just a terrible thing to say about anyone, that they should be traumatized for the sake of a political agenda. So I am not on board with what he was doing there. I don't think he should have been there. I don't think he had the right to be there. He was part of the group that disrupted our worship service, even if he was just documenting it. Frankly, I don't really care if he was there to just document or if he was there to protest. He was there, and he was part of what disrupted our worship service. And so I don't think he should have been there. I don't think he should have said the things that he said. I don't think that it was the right time to interview a pastor in the midst of a protest, in the midst of his flock being attacked by wolves. And I just think that he handled it very unprofessionally.
And case in point, again, like, what I find interesting is Don Lemon, in the aftermath of that video, and we played this on a previous segment, began talking about what he did. And so again, a lot of this, if he's facing off against the FACE Act and the Klan Act, if that's what the Department of Justice is going to use, holy cow. Hey, I didn't know 2026 was going to be filled with this roller coaster ride of emotions.
MAGA administration and the fake news MAGAs are losing.
Mastermind Hour. Lemon is in hot water. All he needs is a little tea bag in the face.
Their mind over something that's not even true. So let me just make it clear, because this assistant attorney general, I don't know, gosh, what's her name? It's something Hammett, Gillen or whatever. So I had no affiliation to that organization. I didn't even know they were going to this church until we followed them there. We were there chronicling protests. Once the protest started in the church, we did an act of journalism, which was report on it and talk to the people who were involved, which included the pastor, members of the church, and members of the organization. That's it.
It looked like people were leaving. They were upset. I mean, look, whatever that protest was trying to do, it failed miserably at it.
It's called journalism. First Amendment, all that stuff. For all of you people who believe in the First Amendment, absolutist, there you go. So why don't you talk to the actual person who is in charge of the organization and whose idea it was to have the protest at the church before you start blaming me for stuff for which you have no idea. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
What do you think of this? I mean, this is unacceptable. It's shameful. It's shameful to enter.
Precisely, Dr. Nick. It's called backpedaling. Now, I am a free speech absolutist, but if I'm going to be engaging in free speech, it's going to be on this platform or on stage, in which there are rules, obviously, and when you're having a debate with somebody. I believe in free speech in my live stream chat. I believe in free speech on all social media platforms. Now, of course, there's always consequences depending on what you say, as those scumbag red pillars seem to have learned a lesson about their little Miami adventure. But nonetheless, hey, free speech. But you don't kick down a place of worship, go on a private business, or anything of that nature because, hey, were you invited in? And it's sounding like they were not.
Interrupt a public gathering of Christians in worship.
But there were folks who will say,
I have to take care of my flock.
okay, but listen, we live in there's a constitution in the First Amendment to freedom of speech and freedom to assemble and protest.
We're here to worship. We're here to worship Jesus because that's the hope of these cities. That's the hope of the world is Jesus Christ.
I want to be very respectful. Please don't push me though.
Yeah, but you went into their house, at least as it stands, unless there's contrary evidence showing you were invited, you were not invited. And you better believe this administration is going to use this as a political tool.
We're here to worship Jesus.
Yes.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Okay. That's why we're here.
Okay.
That's what we're about.
Don't you think Jesus would be understanding
we're about
and love these folks?
We're about spreading the love of Jesus.
But did you try to talk to them as a
no
Christian?
one is willing to talk.
Okay.
I have to take care of my church and my family, so I asked that you actually would also leave this building.
You don't want us to
Unless you're here to worship. Unless you're here to worship.
I'm always worship. I'm a Christian.
We're here to worship.
Yeah.
We're here to worship. Okay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Now, yes, again, unless you're here to worship, hey, then you need to go, because he made the mistake. This is a serious mistake in which they could be facing off some serious accusations. Now, of course, it is interesting seeing the fallout, especially how he's even having a fight with Nicki Minaj, the rapper, who called Trump handsome and JD Vance the assassin. Horrible choice of words there. But he's having now a wild war of words with Nicki Minaj, where even Nicki Minaj is saying like, "Oh, you're nothing more than a a gobbler. Okay, so there you go. I think that's far as I could say. Well, basically, Don cocksucking lemon is disgusting. How dare you? I want that thug in jail. He would never do that to any other religion. Lock him up. That's from Nicki Minaj. I mean, already this thing's starting to explode. I mean, come on, Nicki. X is a family-friendly account. Never once has there been ever anything this negative. And of course, he's using Chucky. Ugh. Listen, please, everyone, let's try and be civil here. We're trying to live in a civil society here with rules and regulations and beliefs and ideals. I want to pull up one other video here because there was an aftermath to it. Again, so many people have downloaded that live stream, got clips from it, got all the information from it. And if you listen, and if the DOJ is truly going to be enacting consequences towards this activist group, then if that church decides to pursue its legal actions, there's a lot of evidence. And again, the key thing here is if there's documentation, paperwork, emails showing that that group was invited into that church, it changes the narrative just a little bit. But from the words of that pastor, you guys were not invited. We want you to leave. Turns out that, again, we will see. I want to pull this up here.
Now, you think they're patriots?
I don't think so, especially those ICE agents.
That's what I'm talking
no.
about. Yeah.
No, they're terrorists. They're traitors.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for your service. I appreciate.
Today we had the honor to protest with Nikema Armstrong and the Racial Justice Network. Just like Jesus did, we went into that church and we flipped tables peacefully. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Where are your people? Why are you not at Whipple every day fighting for the humanity, standing for our people? Where are you? You drink your coffee, you got your jewelry, you have your nice clothes, but what do you do? What do you do to stand for your Somali and Latino communities? I'm not going to comment. You have no comment. Exactly. As you can see, all these pretend Christians, all these comfortable white people who are living lavish, comfortable lives while children are dragged into concentration camps. You're living real life, nice lives with your lattes, doing absolutely nothing for your Latino and Somali brothers and sisters. You come here to a man wearing a suit. Is a preacher? Did Jesus wear a suit? Did Jesus profit off the words? No. Jesus would dine within this. You do not touch me. Touch me again and see what happens.
Hey, you can't.
You are a fake Christian. Why are you not standing with your Somali and Latino communities? Why do I not see you out at Whipple every day protesting this attack on humanity? Where are you? You're sinners. You're pretending to be Christians. But we know you live an easy life, don't you? A very easy life while people are starving. Living real comfortable while the people starve. Living real comfortable while children are dragged into concentration camps. You're all living real comfortable, aren't you? Shame on you. Do something. Stand with the Somalis. Stand with the Latinos. Quit ignoring this injustice. He wears a suit and tie and he hangs out with Kristi Noem. How is that a Christian? You're supposed to accept all immigrants, are you not? Why are you not going?
And again, you don't want to be stalking anybody. So let's talk about what is the Klan Act and what is the FACE Act. So the Klans Act refers to the KKK Act of 1871. The third of three enforcement acts passed during the Reconstruction. So that was good after the old Civil War between the United States and the Confederacy, which gave the president power to use federal troops to suspend habeas corpus to suppress the Klan and protect African Americans' voting rights and other civil liberties, allowing federal prosecution for groups denying rights. So, I will be reaching out to some of my legal friends who are involved in, like, YouTube, like legal stuff, and comparing those protesters to again, vast difference between these protesters and, well, the KKK, especially of the 1800s. But nonetheless, if that is also being brought up, but I think the more serious charge, and I think this is the one that is probably going to be used, that is most likely going to be used, the FACE Act. So it's called the Freedom of Access and Clinic Entrances Act. It is a 1994 U.S. federal law that prohibits using threats, physical obstruction, force to interfere with access to reproductive health service or intentionally harm people at places of religious worship. Notice that last word right there, intentionally harm people at places of religious worship. So, in those videos, and there's a treasure trove of them all over social media, X, Facebook, Discord, Reddit, you name it. You have people leaving that church in mass, okay? And of course, you have Don Lemon with his camera and microphone putting in people's faces and talking to people, and you got that jagoff with the beard yelling at everybody. Now, the FACE Act, what it does is it aims to protect patients and providers at clinics and worshipers at churches from violence, intimidation, and property damage, creating federal crimes and allowing civil lawsuits for violations. While passed to address attacks on abortion clinics, it also protects religious freedom. So that's the one they're probably going to use the most. All right. They're going to say, like, these activists, possibly, if the DOJ truly goes forward with it. Again, I will be reaching out to some of my fellow content creators who are in the realm of lawfare, all that kind of stuff. And it will be very interesting to see their perspective and overall what the FACE Act and the Klans Act could be done towards the activists and organizers who were protesting or interrupted that church service on that Sunday. I'm all for free speech. Just remember, we have a crazy legal system here, folks. And if you're part of it, or if you're going to be part of this activist or independent media circle, it's imperative. It's very imperative that you know who you're with, where you're going, what's going on, because God forbid you find yourself in a quandary that you can't really get yourself out of. And the internet lives forever. And this is going to be used as a political tool. But Don Lemon, as a journalist, I think you should have looked a little bit more into these people, what they were doing. Again, if they were invited in, change the narrative just a little bit. But if not, oh my God. Here comes the legal lawfare. And it ain't going to be fun. And I don't wish it on anybody. All right. And you know what? Shake and bacon. This is what I tell my audience, especially during the previous election cycles. Know your rights as a voter at the federal level and at the state level. But also, know your city and state laws, all of them, before following any mob. Okay? And that's what I love about my audience. I need you guys to think for yourselves. Now, do you think Don Lemon's actions or those protesters' actions were justified going into that church? In my opinion, again, I am for free speech. You just don't go into somebody's house, place of worship, private business, and say, hey, listen to me. That's not how it works. In the business, we call that a no bueno.